Today's challenge, today's discussion, this morning's preeminent work of art and magic coming to you from the Rhine Report, not often seen on YouTube. The subject being, "The People Must Rise Up," quote, Judge J. Michael Luddig. From the voice of a preeminent judge from the conservative side of the legal spectrum, who was a Court of Appeals judge, I think it was the Fifth Circuit, who also clerked for Justice Scalia and was even shortlisted for the Supreme Court. Astonishing as it sounds to me, he calls for the people to rise up in opposition to the breakdown of the rule of law in our cherished democratic society. Judge Luddig contends that this president has severely broken the laws of the United States and its well-defined Constitution multiple times, and that no mechanism exists in practice to prevent him from continuing to establish a dictatorship on this country. Just as I have been saying in multiple podcasts over a very long period of time, which commenced back in 2017, if my memory does not play tricks on me. Play the clip.
So I then went in and analyzed under the Constitution and the laws of the United States and came to the conclusion that for not one single one of his signature initiatives did this president have support in the Constitution and laws of the United States.
Of all the attacks on rule of law that you outline in your piece that have resulted in, as you point out, more than 200 legal challenges that have been filed against the administration, most of which have been successful, at least preliminarily. Which of these are most important?
Any single one of them ought to be sufficient, Brad, for us to say no more. Enough. But certainly any number of them in combination should be more than sufficient. And all of them together, Brad, it's unimaginable to me that the American people will not respond to this first 100 days by this president. This is not rocket science at this point for anybody. Every man and woman in the street across America can understand instinctively that what Donald Trump has done these past 100 days is wrong. Whether or not they have any idea whether it's constitutional or supported by the laws of the United States. And I have never been one, as you know, to believe that the American people are supposed to know the law and the Constitution. That's why I phrased that the way I did. Every American instinctively knows that the President of the United States just can't possibly have this unilateral authority and power.
And as I have suspected, Judge Luddig confirms, though very carefully, the unlikelihood of the Supreme Court stopping Trump or the possibility of a Trump Congress ever impeaching him, leaving the only available answer that of the people taking to the streets?
The first thing that could be done at some point is impeaching the president. But I say it that way because everyone knows that this Congress is never going to impeach the president, much less the Senate convict him. That may change in the midterms. I personally believe, Brad, that there'll be very little left of the America that we've known for almost 250 years by the time of the midterms in 2026. But implicit in that is what I say in the article, which is the president has already run roughshod over every institution in America, and most importantly, the other two co-equal and coordinate branches of the government, the Congress and the judiciary. So I say in the article, and I'm confident of this, that it's already clear that the Supreme Court cannot stop this president. If one assumes, as I believe, that this Congress won't, even if it could, then there is nothing at all to stop this president for the next 3.5 years other than the American people. If the American people, rise up and say no more, then at the very least, one has to assume, that would awaken the sleeping Congress.
Judge Luddig goes no further than this generalization for obvious reasons, but it's extraordinary in its breadth and its meaning and its implications, even though he points out the two historical instances of revolution that have earmarked our democratic experiment from its inception. Now, most of our pundits, with some very notable exceptions, such as Thom Hartmann, keep selling us minimal victory stories and happy day narratives for very small Trump regime setbacks, while ignoring Judge Luddig's elephant in the room, which was addressed in this video.
The case for that reason alone. He does not want the Supreme Court to decide any single one of these cases, Brad.
When you were Assistant Attorney General, or when you were serving in the Reagan White House, did you ever imagine, Judge, that you would be in the Atlantic calling for a public uprising?
Donald Trump himself would probably characterize what he's doing as a revolution. And I know a lot of his followers do and have for years, Brad, because that's what's happening.
You're absolutely right, of course, that President Trump's adherents have long held to iconography and a mythos of the American Revolution. I found it remarkable the way in which in your piece you quoted the Declaration of Independence. You enumerated a bill of particulars that made this itself sound like a declaration in its own way.
Yeah, clearly and intentionally making the indisputable point that the president is revolting against all of that is and has been America. And I would hasten to add, Brad, if you could have the president sit down and ask him, are you leading a revolt against all of Americans' institutions? I think he would say yes and proudly say yes, right? I mean, just think of his campaign mantra. He wants to make America great again, impliedly that it is not great any longer. Well, that's a revolution against the past. And of course, literally under our system of government and our Constitution, it's no longer available for anyone, let alone the President of the United States, to revolt against the federal government. We had one revolution in order to create this government against which it is no longer possible for an American, let alone a president, to revolt.
I would take it further. Unless there is an intervention, there is going to be a civil war in the streets, and the military might get involved. This would be horrific. But it might be, at the end of the day, a justifiable rebellion against tyranny. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. And I'm open to receiving answers from you, comments, analysis, criticisms, agree or disagree. Thanks again.